Nouns, masculine and feminine. Nouns are the names of things, places and activities. In French, all nouns are masculine or feminine. This can be a really frustrating and confusing concept for English speakers trying to learn to speak French. So, what I aim to do here is take a little bit of the pressure off and show you why we have masculine and feminine in French, how it works, and how to learn it. Let's take the pressure off. When I lived in France, I started to realize that French people didn't all get masculine and feminine 100% either. And there was a radio show that I used to listen to on a Friday afternoon where the DJ would play a game where he would choose 10 new nouns each week, and callers would call in and try to guess the gender of as many nouns as possible. And I was surprised at how many they got wrong. So, if they can make mistakes, so can we. And a lot of the time, it will go unnoticed. Sometimes, someone might correct you if they notice, but that's a learning experience, and that's good. So, why does masculine and feminine exist in the French language? Well, it's to tackle a specific problem. It's a problem that's common to the English language, and that problem is with what we call indefinite and definite articles. In short, the indefinite article is the word a, or sometimes we pronounce it a, and the definite article is the word the, and these articles we use before nouns. For example, a dog, the car. And when we're using these articles, and especially when we're putting them in the context of a sentence or a longer utterance, there are some situations that arise which can make them difficult to pronounce. Let me give you an English example. When we have a word which starts with a vowel sound, such as apple, because the word a is a vowel, saying a apple is a little bit uncomfortable, especially when we say in a sentence, please pass me a apple, or pass me a apple please. So we tackle this by placing an N after the A when the word a precedes a word that starts with a vowel. So any word that starts with A, I, E, O or U, we will place an N after the A. Please pass me an apple. Rolls off the tongue, much easier. Makes things easier to pronounce. This is what happens in French. So in French, using the correct article, a word is designated as masculine or feminine so that it can benefit from the article preceding it. It helps us to put our mouth into the correct position to say the word that follows, and to help that fit into sentences nicely. Le père. Je suis le père. Un père. Je suis un père. J'ai un père. It just helps position my mouth nicely to say the word père when I use le or un. La table. Une table. It just helps with pronunciation in that same way. So let's explain a little bit more about the definite and indefinite article. Why do we have these two confusing names? Well, they actually give us a little clue. If my wife was to say to me while she's doing some painting, please can you pass me a cup? Then I know that she wants a cup and I can pass it to her, and that it doesn't really matter which cup I pass her. She just wants to mix some paint in it or something like that. Any cup will do. However, she might be doing something in particular that requires a specific cup, and then she would probably say something to me like, please pass me the cup, and in that case I know she is defining a specific cup. That's why it's called the definite article because she is defining a specific cup, whereas the indefinite article, a, is specifying any cup. Okay, let's look at some feminine word endings just to show us how impractical it is to try and learn all of the rules that decide whether a word, whether a noun in French is masculine or feminine. Already there are tons of them, and I find that impractical to learn that each one of those word endings and try and remember it as a feminine word ending. If we add to that the fact that each one of these endings has several exceptions, then that just adds to our to the difficulty of doing that. So there's no point. There is an easier way. So here's some masculine word endings. The same situation here. We can notice some generalities about both, and that are helpful, and such as a lot of the feminine ones end with e. But in general, it's not helpful to learn all of these endings. What is helpful is to retain the fact that most words borrowed from English are masculine. Le weekend, for example. So, how does the definite article work in French and the indefinite article? The definite article, or the word the, has three different words in French, as opposed to one in English. We have one for masculine, one for feminine, and one for plural. So, if I'm talking about a masculine noun, such as le stylo, which is the pen, I would use le. If I'm talking about a feminine noun, la table, I would use la. If I'm talking about the tables, as in many of them, I would use les, L-E-S. So I'll just go through that again. Masculine, L-E, le. Feminine, L-A, la. Plural, L-E-S, les. Not les, but les. So the indefinite article, a or an in English. In French, again, we have three. So the masculine is un, and the feminine is une. Un spelt U-N, une spelt U-N-E. And the plural is somewhat different, as in we take the words de, which means of, and les, which is the plural definite article. We combine them to make des, which means some, as opposed to a or an. If my wife was to say to me, pass me some cups, she would be using the plural of the definite article in English. And in French we say des. Not des, but des. D-E-S. So we have certain situations that arise when we are using nouns in French with the definite and indefinite articles. And these again happen when we are using words that start with vowels. I have two words here, échec, le échec, which is the failure, and la église, which is the church. Okay, so le échec is masculine, that's why we use le, le. But like at apple, it's awkward to say. So we stick le onto échec and we replace the e or the vowel with an apostrophe, making it l'échec. Same with the feminine nouns. La église, église being a feminine word, we say l'église, removing the a and replacing it with an apostrophe. The indefinite article, un, for the masculine, we leave it exactly the same. We don't change how it's written at all. However, As you can see on the right side of the equals sign here, I've put a little n in front of the e, and that's just to show that we sound a little extra e very quickly to make it a little bit easier to pronounce sometimes. It's not written, it's just an oral habit. So, un échec just makes things roll off the tongue a little easier. With the feminine, we don't make any changes verbally or written at all. We just use une église. Although it's two vowels, it works together and it doesn't need changing. So the plural, if we're talking about many churches or more than one, it would be les églises. But because it's a vowel sound that follows, les églises is a little difficult to say, like a, apple. So we put a small z. We don't write it, we still write it as it is on the left hand side of the equal sign, but when we pronounce it, we pronounce a little z in front of the e. Les églises. And the same with des églises. How do we approach learning noun gender? What's the easy way? Well, the easy way is quite simple. We tend to learn nouns that we use a lot, and so every time we come across a new noun, we learn its article with it. As a standard, we would use the definite article or the word the. If it was masculine and it was the pen, it would be le stylo. We would never just learn the word stylo, but we would learn to spell le stylo as the definite article and the word. Here's an example. In English, if we were to learn the word table, we would just learn table and learn how to spell T-A-B-L-E. In French, we would never do that. It's a new word that we're learning. We're going to learn to write and spell and say this new word. We learn it as la table. We write it L-A space T-A-B-L-E. Never learn a new noun without its article. If it's a word that starts with a vowel and therefore is contracted, when you come across it, it might be difficult to identify whether it's masculine or feminine. Therefore, look for that word in the dictionary or a little further along and look for it with its indefinite article and learn that. Or the dictionary may tell you. La fin. Bon courage.